The climate on Earth is determined by the ever-changing sun, for which we have two models. The model we choose shapes the scientific recognition of how the sun operates and affects our climate. The key for choosing is evident in the sunlight itself that presents evidence for only one model. Two opposite models are being recognized in the science of astrophysics. One model presents the Sun as a sphere of 73% of hydrogen gas and 24% of helium gas, where high-temperature nuclear fusion occurs at its core, according to the theory, by which hydrogen atoms are fused into helium atoms, with energy being freed up in the process that lights up the Sun. That's the most widely accepted theory. The opposite model is that of the plasma fusion sun. This is a sphere of plasma surrounded by an electron-dense layer where electric interaction occurs with the interstellar plasma surrounding it, whereby plasma particles are fused into atomic elements that are electrically neutral and flow away from the Sun with the solar wind. The real physical evidence tells us which model is represented by it. Which of the two models accords with the real physical evidence that we see in the sunlight, and which of the two models does not? Here, the choice is not one of opinions, but is based on truth. Here, the evidence begins to speak itself and stake its claim. The physical evidence tells us what is real. Of course, the real physical evidence is often surprising. It has the power to shatter illusions. Is this important? It is actually more important than one cares to acknowledge. The manner in which people react to what they perceive as reality, which is so often based on opinion rather than evidence, determines their experiences. This includes the perception of what controls the climate on Earth. This perception has invariably enormous consequences for our living on Earth as the result of our responding to our perceptions that are often just beliefs. The two models that you see before you represent total opposites. The model you choose, by the weight of the consequences, opens up issues for you that go far beyond merely academic considerations. It's the consequences that make the issues extremely important for our living on Earth. For this reason, I need to start here, with the consequences. This means I have to start with exploring what is inherent in each of the two models in terms of the critical consequences. Doing this sets up the requisite stage for measuring the importance of what the evidence in the sunlight, as shown here, represents, which the video is designed to explore for its critical aspects. So let's begin with the comparison of the two models in terms of their consequences, as they are related to climate considerations. The first model is the widely accepted model of the internally powered hydrogen fusion sun. Number 1. This model presents a sun that is rock solid in its operation, unvarying, a solar constant that one can count on. Under this model, no changes in the energy intensity of the sun is possible or has occurred for millions of years. Number 2. Under the model of the unvarying sun, all climate fluctuations on Earth are necessarily attributed to human action for the perceived impossibility of any other cause affecting climate change. Number 3. The human cause for climate change is attributed to mankind's emission of carbon gases, based on the observation that these gases have hugely increased in the global atmosphere since the start of the Industrial Revolution. Number 4. Based on the assumed constant sun and the measured man-made increase in atmospheric carbon gases, which are recognized to be greenhouse gases, the conclusion has been drawn that humanity has begun a course that will invariably heat up the Earth by trapping ever more radiated heat in the atmosphere and thereby overheat the planet. Intolerable consequences are envisioned for such a future. Number 5. In order to prevent the envisioned consequences, enormous demands are placed on humanity to radically shut down carbon-based energy production all across the world, regardless of the economic suicide that would result. That is already happening. Number 6. The most genocidal action, however, that is demanded on this front is the presently near-worldwide implemented biofuels mandate. The mandate has become a legal requirement for the nations to divert vast amounts of food products to be burned in the automobiles in the form of ethanol and biodiesel, even at the cost of causing the worst Holocaust in history of death by starvation. The enormous size of farmland that is taken out of food production worldwide for meeting the biofuels mandates would normally nourish 400 million people. In a world that has 1 billion people living in chronic starvation, the mass burning of food has become a holocaust by policy that is murdering minimally 100 million people per year by starvation in the greatest ever genocide on Earth. That's ongoing. It evidently takes a lot of corn, etc., to brew up 550 billion liters of alcohol hooch, which ethanol is, which is then distilled up to 99% purity in solution to produce 92 billion liters of ethanol that is used to dilute gasoline with. The massive volumes of food that are sequestered from the nourishment of populations to be burned for no appreciable benefits at all are foods stolen from the most needy. The production of biofuels overall requires nearly as much energy input from carbon sources to produce the fuel than the fuel gives back in energy. So it isn't an alternate energy resource then. Nor is the biofuel a panacea for clean energy production that is free of greenhouse gases. From the burning of gasoline, for example, in the case of octane, 47% of the exhaust is CO2. In the case of ethanol, the CO2 exhaust is 40%. For the 7% difference, 100 million people are murdered each year with starvation. In addition, the biofuels process, especially that for ethanol, with all the energy inputs factored in for producing the fuel, results in a fuel cycle that almost doubles the CO2 emissions into the atmosphere for the applied energy use. Thus, in the end, The ethanol project violates the very objective that it was created for, which was supposed to reduce carbon emissions that are deemed greenhouse gases. In short, the biofuels process is a scam that serves no other purpose than the depopulation genocide that has been spelled out in capital letters for many decades in numerous ways as a chosen imperial policy. Fostering genocide has long been an imperial policy, going back centuries in some cases, as in the case of India under British rule. The global warming issue is being used for this policy. This is easily done under the doctrine of the hydrogen sun that is deemed to be rigidly invariable, as such a sun would be if the concept was real. The world has spent 40 years in a state of dreaming, or climate dreaming as one might call it, with half of that time increasingly devoted to economic destruction and genocide. Ironically, the entire dreamscape and related tragedies are rooted in a platform for which no real evidence exists, which opens up many avenues for dreaming. However, instead of dreaming, should one not rather build the house of civilization on a model that is supported by real physical evidence? The model for which real physical evidence exists, wherever one looks, is ironically the opposite model to that which is generally accepted. The model that is supported by real physical evidence is the model of the plasma sun. Here it gets interesting. There is a key found in the nature of the sunlight that is not possible on the platform of the hydrogen sun, which thereby disproves it, but which is inherently natural on the platform of the plasma sun. The plasma sun has a totally different basis than that theorized for the hydrogen gas sun model. Plasma is not a gas. It is not atomic in nature. It is not visible to the eye. It consists of protons and electrons that are the electrically charged building blocks that all the atoms in the universe are assembled from. Plasma is too small to be visible. The largest type of the plasma particles is 100,000 times smaller than the smallest atom, and the electron is 1,000 times smaller than that. Though being small, the plasma particles carry an immense electric charge that is 39 orders of magnitude stronger than the force of gravity. The proton has a positive charge, and the electron a negative charge. By the electric force, particles of like charge repel each other, and of unlike charge attract one another. By the protons repelling one another, free plasma in space tends to be highly diffused. This means that a plasma sun has a 1,000 times lower mass density than a hydrogen sun of the same size would have if a hydrogen sun phenomenon was possible. Furthermore, unlike electric charges attract one another by this electric force attraction, electrons with 1,800 times less mass are always attracted to protons, though they never really latch on to them. Before the two can latch together, a feature of the electric force, causes the electron to be repelled at a close distance, whereby it rebounds into what resembles an endless dance of attraction and repulsion. In the soup of mutually repelling protons and dancing electrons, the dancing electrons that are 1,800 times lighter than the protons tend to migrate away from the center of gravity, whereby they form an electron-rich layer on the surface that we behold at the surface of the sun. We recognize it as a visible surface by the products of the reactions that occur there. A plasma sun has many features. Number 1. As I said before, at the core is a sphere of cosmic plasma that is held together by gravitational force. 2. As I also said, gravitational pressure is acting on the plasma, which forms an electron-dense layer that becomes its surface, where the sun becomes electrically active. 3. This means that a plasma sun is not internally powered, but is being powered from the outside by interstellar plasma being focused onto it from afar. The resulting interaction that is electrically accelerated causes plasma fusion reactions to occur at the solar surface. In the resulting high-energy fusion process at the surface of the sun, 3 major types of emissions become possible that are inherent in the physics of a surface-active sun. 3a. The most visible effect is the sunlight. A wide spectrum of sunlight and solar energy is produced in the electric fusion process that gives us all the colors in a continuous band. This feature is not possible on any other basis. 3b. The feature that makes the sunlight possible is the plasma fusion process itself, in which all the known natural atomic elements are synthesized on the surface of the sun, which subsequently flow away with the solar wind. 3c. Since the high-energy plasma fusion reactions occur right at the surface of the sun, the cosmic ray flux that high-energy plasma reactions generate exists strongly enough on the sun to significantly impact the Earth and its climate. The climate factors on Earth are caused by solar cosmic ray factors that are themselves caused by resonating and fluctuating plasma in interstellar space. There is no such thing in the plasma universe as a constant sun. Electric plasma is subject to a wide variety of resonating effects, which affect the Earth secondarily in the form of climate fluctuations. There is no such thing as a constant climate on Earth either, or ever has been in all history. The ice core evidence makes this fact rather plain. Look at the huge climate fluctuations at about 8,300 years ago, which dwarfs the little ice age climate change. This wasn't caused by man-made greenhouse gases. The world population was minuscule then. Also look at the enormous down-ramping of the global climate from the Mayaean warming to the Roman warming to the medieval warming right to the present world. This enormous down-ramping, with huge fluctuations along the way, are features that one would expect to see as the result of resonating plasma in interstellar space that powers our sun. What you see here wasn't caused by human effects, much less by human contribution to greenhouse gases, and even less so by CO2 that isn't a factor at all, except in the imagination. When up to 97% of the greenhouse effect of the Earth's atmosphere is caused by water vapor, which is hugely affected by the effects on the sun, eyebrows should be raised against the claims of the climate forcing theory. Furthermore, when as little as a millionth part of the greenhouse effect is demonstrably caused by CO2, of which the man-made contribution is roughly 10%, then the atmospheric CO2 concentration, no matter how little or how large it may be, is insignificant for comparisons with the ever-changing cosmic dynamics that affect our sun, which hugely affect the Earth and its climate with solar cosmic ray flux fluctuations. With plasma streams being electric in nature, electric resonance effects occur at all levels, with the result that plasma density around the sun is constantly changing. In other words, the sun is not a constant factor for climate on Earth. Enormously large effects of the sun affect the climate on Earth in huge ways, by affecting cloudiness and water vapor density in the atmosphere, which are two factors that massively affect our climate. In comparison with the ever-changing cosmic dynamics that affect our climate, carbon gases are insignificant. The solar cosmic ray factor is so powerful in affecting cloudiness that reflects a portion of the incoming sun energy back into space, which is thereby lost to us, that in comparison, the human activity factors amount to nothing. They truly affect nothing at all, including CO2. Only the ghost of CO2 affects us as a mythological factor, as it conjures up dream visions where nothing is actually real. The most critical need in modern times is for society to open its eyes to what is demonstrably real and is founded in verifiable physical evidence in understandable universal principles. Since the changing cloudiness also affects the atmospheric water vapor density that causes up to 97% of the greenhouse effect, according to available evidence, the CO2 density factor is too small a factor to affect anything in this gigantic arena where cosmic factors ran the show. As I said before, while the CO2 has the characteristic to qualify as a greenhouse gas, its minuscule density in the air and the fact that its effects are masked almost completely by the vastly more powerful water vapor effects enables the CO2 to contribute only roughly a millionth part of the overall greenhouse effect of the atmosphere of the Earth. since the accumulated human contribution to the global atmospheric CO2 since the start of the Industrial Revolution adds up to a mere 10% of it. The result has no effect on the climate that is of practical significance. It's the solar cosmic ray flux that's the climate factor that overrides all other factors. However, the 10% increase in atmospheric CO2 that humanity has caused since the start of the Industrial Revolution has a significant effect on increasing plant growth. But this is a different subject altogether and a big subject all by itself. As I had pointed out in several other videos, the increasing atmospheric CO2 is a good thing for us all. It makes the world greener and agriculture more productive. We need more atmospheric CO2 for all the green plants to thrive, not less. The world is presently so starved of CO2 that when greenhouse operators double the CO2 concentration in their facilities, a 50% increase in plant growth results. The current CO2 deficiency is the real big climate issue for all life on Earth. It's bigger than the hyped-up global warming myth. The CO2 deficiency promises to become supercritical when the next ice age begins, which will likely happen in 30 years, according to a wide range of credible evidence. And all of this, including the ice age dynamics, is deeply related to what we see evident in the sunlight, because what we see there indicates which type of solar model is supported by real evidence, which in turn affects the consequences that we experience. The evidence that we see in the sunlight here is only possible on the platform of the plasma sun, where cosmic ray factors cause all climate changes on Earth. The plasma sun tells us that all the draconian acts to prevent global warming can be safely scrapped, and that committing economic suicide to prevent global warming is totally unnecessary. Likewise, can the biofuels holocaust in the name of preventing global warming be scrapped then, that is presently murdering 100 million people a year with starvation, which is simply not needed then, which is a crime against humanity from the beginning. It also means that the global CO2 levels can be safely increased tenfold to historic levels to invigorate the biosphere. With the plasma sun model becoming recognized, humanity gives itself a foundation that allows it to live again and develop, and to be free of all the depopulation ideologies. But is the evidence that we see in the sunlight really that big, so that it enables such a wide liberation on all fronts? The answer is yes. The evidence is that big. The key is found in what the numerous faint lines represent that are sprinkled across the spectrum of the white sunlight. These faint lines have a powerful cause that no other platform in the universe than the plasma sun can create. These faint lines are generally referred to as absorption lines. Light absorption occurs when photons of a specific energy level encounter atoms in their path that absorb light of specific wavelengths. Photons that are the carrier of light are packets of energy. The photons come in different sizes with different energy content that are specific to the different colors. When a matched encounter of a photon and an atom happens, the energy that is carried by the photon is captured and absorbed by an electron of the atom that the photon encounters. In the process, the photon ceases to exist. The absorbed energy forces the electron to a higher orbit that corresponds with the electron's higher energy state. Since these energized electrons don't fit into the makeup of the original atomic structure, the electron reverts back to its original domain in the form of a type of electromagnetic wave within the atom. When this process happens, the previously absorbed energy forms a new photon. The new photon that is born in this process, however, has no specific directionality. The retransmission of absorbed light is scattered into all directions. This means that to the observer of the sunlight, the absorbed light stream is lost. Since the entire process of light absorption and retransmission is specific to the makeup of an atomic element, the absorbed color bands are specific to an atom's internal structure. Some atomic elements are able to absorb several specific colors, as in the case of the hydrogen atom shown here. The numerous absorption lines that you see here in sunlight, as it is observed on the surface of the Earth, tell us that the sunlight has encountered numerous different types of atomic elements in its path to us, which is evident by the numerous absorption lines spread all across the white light spectrum. Evidently, the absorption lines were caused after the sunlight was created. They were not in the original sunlight. They tell us of a large volume of specific atomic elements that the light from the sun has encountered on the way to us. The discovery process for all this began in the 1800s. It was recognized in 1802 by the English chemist William H. Wollaston that a number of dark features appear in the sunlight spectrum. A dozen years later, in 1814, the German physicist Joseph von Fraunhofer independently discovered these features in the form of slightly darker lines appearing in various places in the sunlight spectrum. He didn't know what they mean, but he studied them and mapped them. He did an exhaustive study of them, in which he carefully measured their wavelengths by their location in the spectrum. In this manner, he mapped 570 of such lines. In honor of this work, these lines were named the Fraunhofer lines. Fraunhofer designated the principal features with the capital letter A through K, and the weaker features with other letters. About 45 years later, it was noted by the researchers Kirchhoff and Bunsen that a number of Fraunhofer lines coincide with the discovered characteristic emission lines identified in the spectra of heated elements, such as in the case of hydrogen. It was deduced by them that the dark features in the solar spectrum are caused by light absorption of chemical elements existing in the solar atmosphere. The Swiss mathematician and mathematical physicist Johann Jacob Balmer discovered in 1885 the existence of a lawful geometric progression of the spectral lines of the hydrogen atom. Balmer created a mathematical series based on successive energy quantum states of an electron in an atom that corresponds to successively larger transitions away from the quantum base that he named 2 in his series. He extended the process of progression all the way to 9 and beyond. The computed values, of course, are also true in reverse for the emission of spectral lines of light emitted when the electron converts its energy back into a new photon as it resumes its normal position in the atom. Why is this significant? It is significant as proof that the spectral lines that Fraunhofer had discovered and mapped are the lawful results of light energy absorption of chemical elements in the space between the photosphere, where the sunlight is created, and the observer on the Earth. Since the different structures of different atomic elements result in different but specific absorption lines, which have been recognized in their signature, it becomes possible to determine with great certainty what specific atomic elements are present in high concentrations between us and the source of the sunlight. The result is significant because what we see is not what one would expect. The main signature lines reveal the presence of a number of extremely heavy elements existing in the sun's corona, such as sodium, magnesium, calcium, nickel, iron, titanium, and even mercury, with mercury being nearly as heavy as lead. Such extremely heavy elements shouldn't exist in the solar atmosphere in such great quantities that visible absorption bands result from their presence. If the sun was a hydrogen sun, gravitational attraction would have drawn these heavy elements deep into the sun millions of years ago. But this is not what we see. The answer is simple. The heavy elements that have been detected to exist in great abundance in the corona exist there because they are constantly being created by the sun. They have a dynamic, not a static presence. They are synthesized in the plasma fusion in the photosphere and are distributed away from there with the solar winds. This is the only possibility for them to be existing there. The presence of these heavy elements in the corona is not a static phenomenon like the atmosphere of the Earth. Their presence is dynamic. They are in motion. They are outflowing from the sun. They are synthesized on the surface of the sun in the process of electric plasma fusion. They flow through the corona with the solar wind. This is what the Fraunhofer lines are telling us. This is also the only possibility for the Fraunhofer lines to exist. They reflect the existence of vast volumes of atomic elements in the solar corona and in the space around it, as they flow away while they are constantly replenished with the plasma fusion process that lights up the sun. That the Fraunhofer lines are caused by absorption of sunlight right at the sun, and not the result of light absorption occurring in the Earth's atmosphere, becomes evident when we look at the sunlight at the top of our atmosphere. We see the major light absorption spectra clearly evident there. We can see them even without contrast enhancement. The only absorption spectra that are missing in the sunlight above the Earth's atmosphere are the spectra that are specific to oxygen. A whopping 23% of the Earth's atmosphere is oxygen. The oxygen-related absorption spectra are clearly evident to have been added on Earth by sunlight passing through our oxygen-dense atmosphere. The oxygen lines are named for this reason telluric lines. This means that the remaining absorption lines were cast right at the sun. This also means that our sun is demonstrated to be a plasma sun, which means that no other type of sun really exists than the plasma sun. The Fraunhofer lines also stand as evidence for the plasma sun in still another way. They tell us in a clearly measurable fashion that extremely heavy atomic elements exist in the solar corona, such as mercury, that is almost 4 times heavier than iron. With mercury having a dynamic existence in the corona, like all the other elements that cause absorption lines, the question needs to be asked, what happens to them, especially the heavier mercury? Do we have evidence of its falling out from the solar wind? The answer is yes. The evidence does exist. It actually solves one of the puzzles in astronomy that one might call the Mercury paradox. In relationship with the Earth's mass density, Mercury's mass density is the second highest in the solar system and only slightly less in total than that of the Earth. But Mercury is a tiny planet that has far less gravitational compression weighing on its material than on the Earth. It has been calculated that if the effect of gravitational compression, that is huge on Earth, were to be factored out of the mass density comparison, the materials of which Mercury is made would be significantly denser than that of the Earth. Mercury would have an uncompressed mass density of 5.3 grams per cubic centimeters, versus the Earth's 4.4 grams per cubic centimeter. Mercury's mass density would then be 20% greater than that of the Earth. This is hard to rationalize for such a small planet. Exotic theories have been invented to bridge this self-evident paradox. One of the solutions that has been proposed is to assume that Mercury's metallic core occupies about 42% of total volume, as a sphere of iron 3,600 kilometers in diameter. This compares with 17% for the Earth. A much more likely solution for the Mercury paradox would be to simply acknowledge that with Mercury being the closest planet to our Sun, it would have received the heaviest materials falling out from the solar wind during the time when the solar system was formed. This means that a part of its core would contain large amounts of the more heavy metals, such as mercury, platinum, and gold, which the Fraunhofer lines have demonstrated in principle are flowing off the Sun. In this manner, the entire solar system itself stands as evidence for the plasma Sun, with Mercury having the highest basic mass density by being the closest planet to the Sun. This principle of decreasing mass density in the planets the further a planet is located away from the Sun is evident throughout the solar system. The diminishing mass density to progressively lower values reflects the fact that the lighter materials are carried further in the solar wind, with less fallout along the way. Only the frozen gas planets, Neptune and Uranus, don't match this progression. Being the coldest planets in the range of -200 degrees Celsius, they weigh in with a slightly larger density than that of Saturn, but less than that of Jupiter. Nevertheless, the unique overall mass density distribution across the solar system delivers a clear proof for the plasma Sun model as being totally real, which of course disproves the hydrogen Sun model. A similar paradox that is evident in the sunlight likewise delivers rigorous proof for the plasma Sun model, which again thereby solves the paradox. The paradox is the white sunlight itself, as a continuous band of color that spans the entire spectrum and beyond. The hydrogen Sun model is typically incapable of producing the full spectrum of colors that we see, just as the hydrogen atom can absorb light in only 4 narrow bands of the visible spectrum by the possible quantum mechanics of its electron orbital positions. So is the hydrogen atom only capable of emitting light in the same narrow bands by the actions of the same quantum mechanics. This means that the hydrogen atom is simply incapable of emitting the full spectrum of the white sunlight. The hydrogen Sun model is thereby disproved. The heavy elements of oxygen, carbon, iron, neon, nitrogen, silicon, magnesium, and sulfur that have been detected in the Sun's atmosphere would not exist there if the Sun was a hydrogen Sun. These heavy elements would have all been drawn into the core by gravitational forces, leaving only hydrogen atoms to produce the sunlight. Their detected presence on the Sun proves the Sun to be a plasma Sun. Another hydrogen Sun paradox is one that is related to the planet Mercury's mass density paradox. For its size, as a sphere of hydrogen and helium gas, the Sun is 1,000 times fold too light. If one compares the volume and the mass density of Saturn and Jupiter, it becomes apparent that Jupiter, with double the volume, also has roughly double the mass density, as one would expect to result from the greater gravitational compression of the gas of Jupiter. If one adds the Sun to the comparison, which has 1,000 times greater volume, the corresponding mass density increase by the greater gravitational compression simply doesn't exist. The recognized mass density for the Sun is roughly the same as Jupiter. This large discrepancy is a paradox. It shouldn't exist, but it does exist. The paradox is solved when the Sun is understood as a sphere of plasma, instead of as a sphere of atomic gases. In a plasma sphere, the mass density is primarily determined by the electric force interaction of the plasma particles, and only secondarily, and rather slightly, by the gravitational force. In this case, for the plasma Sun platform, the recognized mass density is just about right, as one would expect, which actually proves the plasma Sun platform. Nor would a gas sphere with 1,000 times the volume of Jupiter actually be able to exist, as the gigantic gravitational forces in such a sphere would crush all atomic structures within it, whereby the hydrogen Sun theory is self-rendered, an impossible dream. Everything that we observe about the Sun comes to light as a paradox under the hydrogen Sun model, which the plasma Sun model resolves. The features that we see here, including the sunspot, are clearly features of electrodynamics instead of being features of gas dynamics. A simple comparison makes the fact rather plain that the Sun is a vast sea of electrodynamics of numerous types. These are not scenes of gas movements, but are electric phenomena that can only be observed in specific light bands that correspond with the electric agitation of atomic elements, in which the electric features are revealed. Even the sunspots are electric phenomena rather than gas phenomena, as this NASA art illustrates. The sunspots are holes left behind in the photosphere after large-scale electric overload eruptions, and they reveal the Sun to be dark on the inside. Is this what one would expect to see on a hydrogen Sun that is heated from within? Of course not. Nor would one expect to see vast streams of solar wind to be flowing away from the Sun forever and ever, so it seems, against the force of gravity. Neither could these streams of material be accelerating as they flow away from the Sun to such high speeds as 800 kilometers per second if they were gas phenomena originating from an hydrogen Sun. Of course, what you see here is what one would expect for a plasma Sun, where streams of plasma particles are electrically self-accelerating by the electric force that causes a plasma self-expansion, in which atomic elements get to ride along. Of course, if the Sun was a hydrogen Sun heated from within, it would be impossible for its surrounding atmosphere, its corona, to be several hundred times hotter than the Sun itself is. Atomic temperatures up to several million degrees have been observed in the solar corona, above a sun that is itself only 5,500 degrees hot. What you see here is natural only for a plasma sun resulting from accelerated plasma interactions. Nor do the hydrogen-sun paradoxes end at the sun itself. The fact that the planets of the solar system orbit in an ecliptic plane, geometrically spaced in distance, in near circular orbits, with their orbits being maintained for billions of years, regardless of cosmic drag, proves that the entire solar system itself is electromagnetically organized. Nothing what you see here can be attributed to the platform of an electrically dead solar system with an electrically neutral hydrogen sun. Only when one begins to see the sun as a plasma-powered sun, that itself cannot exist without the vast electrodynamic forces of interstellar plasma streams, can one acknowledge that nothing is paradoxical, from the largest features in the solar system to the smallest features of the climate on Earth, that reflect solar cosmic ray fluctuations that are inherent in the electric resonances of the solar system as a system of interacting electrodynamics. The vast array of paradoxes that we encounter everywhere with the hydrogen-sun model, from the large planetary scale all the way down to what we find reflected in the sunlight that we see every day, which the plasma platform resolves in every case, leaves one to ask why the hydrogen-sun model remains the most widely accepted model in astrophysics to the present day, in spite of the vast array of self-evident paradoxes that disprove the false, terrible model in every case. The needed answer may be found in exploring the political background from which the terribly incorrect hydrogen-sun model is promoted, and what the objectives of the terror are that are pursued by the promoters of this model of the sun that is presently used to strangle humanity, to cause economic suicide, mass genocide, even depopulation. Not surprisingly, the path leads directly to the gilded halls of empire, to the system of empire that intentionally employs the false model of the sun as a foundation to enforce its coveted goal for world domination. The thoroughly false model is a perfect platform in the hands of empire for inflicting global economic suicide on demand towards the mass depopulation of the planet by starvation, which the global warming scare hoopla is intended for which no real supporting evidence exists. The promoters of the counter-science hoopla that stands behind the crippling scene of science devolution say to society in essence, "The truth be damned, close your mind. We tell you what the truth is. We own your science. We own what science is. We use this control to prove to you what we want you to believe. Your place is to simply believe. We even supply your opinions for you that we want you to imagine as real. We own you. by imprisoning you into dreams. You have no means to escape from this trap, because you lack the scientific power to discern what's the actual truth based on real science and real evidence is. We dazzle you with sparkling dreams, so that you will never reach out for your potential in real science and develop your power as human beings. These are the types of lyrics in the songs of empire, which are rarely ever sung openly, though they are never really hidden either. H.G. Wells was one of the early pioneers who had mastered the art of inspiring the terrifying lyrics that started the war against science within the empire, which by now most likely has far succeeded Wells' expectations, all the way to hiding the science of the Ice Age dynamics, whereby the needed preparations will not be made for the coming transition to it in the 2050s, potentially. The devolution of truth in science, with the tool of irrationality, is intentional. The process has been long in progress. The masters of empire have openly admitted that the subjugation of science under their control is their intention, in whatever form this can be achieved, and against whatever truths may oppose them. Lord Russell argued that control of science is not enough. He argued in his book, The Impact of Science on Society, that radical depopulation is the only sure path for the stable existence of empires. His radical stand is probably rooted in the great debates over what to do with science that started with Wells' call to attention to mobilize an anti-science direction within the system of empire. Within the debates, the advance of science became ever more recognized by the masters as a mortal threat to every form of empire, a threat that would endanger the very foundation of its system with the unbridled advance of scientific and technological progress. The debate was centered on whether science should be crushed, or whether it should be reformed to operate as a tool for the purposes of empire, under strict imposed controls. It appears that the latter path has been chosen. Science became smothered with irrational concepts and contradictions that became mind killers, such as the Big Bang theory that promotes universal entropy, wrapped in theories of star explosions, black holes, and the devolution of everything towards the death of everything, even the death of stars and the death of civilizations, along with the death of sovereignty that is the heart of culture, leading to the death of nations, etc. The Big Bang travesty as a concept of a universe that started with a bang and is invariably fizzing out into nothing thereafter, has become a part of the empire song that desires devolution. The devolution concept is blending with the lyrics for the mass depopulation of the world to less than 1 billion people, which is now demanded as a means for restoring the environment of impotence that imperial systems require to exist. The hydrogen sun model is one of the elements for this chain created by the masters for the intentional devolution of science and for the controlled distortion of reality that enables the controllers to assert power over society. The false model was developed in the general time frame of the great debate in the halls of empire over what to do with science. The plasma universe concept is not something new. It had actually existed prior to the Big Bang promotion that the hydrogen sun model is a part of. The plasma universe concept was developed in the early 1900s by the physicist and later Nobel laureate Hannes Alfvén. He had developed a model for a plasma-powered galaxy based on the leading-edge principles of electrodynamics that became known at the time, such as the principle of the Birkeland currents that reflect the discovered characteristics of magnetically self-aligned electric currents in plasma, discovered by the Norwegian explorer and physicist Kirsten Birkeland. The Alfvén model of the electric galaxy system as a system of self-twisting Birkeland currents had established a revolutionary platform for perceiving a galaxy in terms of an electrodynamic galactic system that accords not only with known physical principles, but also accords to the present day with the observed motions of stars in the real galaxy. Alfvén's truthful model became quickly overlaid with a model that stands in complete opposition to all known principles in astronomy. In the resulting counter-science project, a galactic model was imagined that had all the stars in the galaxy orbiting around an imaginary galactic center of a supermassive black hole. This became the widely accepted model, promoted throughout the sciences. Here the built-in paradox, which was evidently intentionally created, is that the model is physically not possible, according to all known laws of orbital dynamics. An orbital system on the scale of a galaxy is simply not physically possible. If the goal of the false model was intended to crush the heritage of the great pioneer in astronomy, Johannes Kepler, one of the great pioneers of science, and to crush science itself as a concept related to truth, the project to reach this goal has succeeded. The laws of orbital motions that Kepler had discovered, being reflected in the solar system, became applied to the galactic scale, in total disregard of the physical principles that underlie orbital motions, which render orbital motions impossible on the galactic scale due to the rapidly diminishing reach of gravity. When it became self-evident that the theory of orbiting stars is totally impossible under the Kepler-discovered laws of orbital motions, society became quickly smothered with ever more irrational concepts to maintain the false theory, which were intended to render the impossible plausible. For this almost desperate cover-up project, the concept of dark matter and dark energy were imagined. These are phenomena that no one can actually see or detect with technology, but which are required for the fraud to function, which serve as a type of epicycle to twist the evidence to match the impossible. It appears that the various efforts in science devolution have succeeded. More and more concepts that are physically impossible are now fully accepted and promoted by all Western scientific institutions. Science is told by the empire-subjected institutions and world institutions. See, what is impossible is really happening, and see, what is scientifically false is the New Age science that is universally regarded as true. And in case you are still confused, the consensus of scientists is that the CO2 molecule in the air that you contribute to by living and by breathing is a dangerous greenhouse gas that will overheat the earth and eventually make life impossible. So please do commit economic suicide by shutting down energy production to limit CO2, and with it your living. And please do commit mass genocide by the mass burning of food in automobiles to save the planet. You are even pre-absolved by us of the crimes of committing murder. This is how society becomes coerced to lay itself down to die at the end of the long road of intentional science devolution. It is evidently hard for society to dig itself out of the deep, deep grave of science devolution that has been decades in the making to bury it. Nevertheless, the sunlight that we see every day is white, and it has absorption lines sprinkled across it, which are features that only the plasma sun can facilitate, which also facilitates solar cosmic reflux in changing amounts that control the climate on Earth. Society may begin here, with the sunlight that is seen every day, to unravel the paradoxes that cripple it. If one needs proof that our sun really is a plasma sun, the most visible proof is located right here in the sunlight. That's a good point to start with, because no other model for the sun than the plasma sun model is capable of producing the phenomena that you see before you. This means that humanity has a model before it that it can trust to be real. This also means that the known climate consequences that correspond with this model can be trusted likewise, and that all the consequences based on contrary models can be safely scrapped. This means in real terms that the entire pyramid of tragedies that are rooted in the long-paraded false model of the sun, from the global warming to greenhouse scares to biofuels holocaust and all the way to depopulation policies, can be relegated to the trash bin, which sets us free to move forward with what we know to be real. With the vast scene of inverted science and its consequences put behind us, and with every vestige of the tragedies built on this trash fully purged from the face of civilization, we become free at last to live again. With the truthful model for the sun established, based on real physical evidence, the years of dreaming that have shackled humanity for half a century with illusions ends. with truthful science established, including the science of the Ice Age dynamics, the science doldrums come to an end that have allowed centuries of society lying to itself, such as in the form of terrorism, war, and the preparations for nuclear war. Even economic looting and economic collapse will end when science inspires discoveries of truth and the understanding and acknowledgement thereof. On this path, with wider and truer horizons, the impending new Ice Age comes to light with greater challenges for humanity to meet than have ever been faced before in all history, but which holds the potential for us in meeting the challenge for us to become more intensively human than society allows itself to be in the present. The plasma sun model also offers inexhaustible energy resources to mankind for an infinite future, since the cosmic plasma streams that power the sun are also available to be tapped into by humanity with technology. The age of inexhaustible energy begins here. The plasma sun model even provides us a basis for understanding the dynamics of the ice ages with verifiable, real physical evidence, and the science to forecast the future with a high degree of accuracy and with enough time to spare for the needed preparations for the next ice age that all evidence tells us will likely begin in the 2050s, with the plasma sun going inactive altogether at this time. Without the plasma sun model being recognized and it being understood and acknowledged, the science platform in the world would remain so small that humanity won't meet the Ice Age challenge or even recognize it, and become overwhelmed by it and die. But with the science breakthrough established, a new era of Renaissance stands before us, in which not even the sky is the limit, where everything is possible. Then we will build the needed infrastructures and meet the coming Ice Age with a song.